Hi guys, welcome to Windsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. It is part 2 of our gallery wall project, and in this video we will be hanging the gallery wall. I need to confess that I am actually future Hannah appearing here. I forgot to film an intro to this video because I kind of decided last minute to break it into 2 because I was realizing this was going to be a ginormous video. So in the last video, which if you haven't seen, you should go check it out now, I showed you my process of laying out the gallery wall, some things I consider, and you kind of saw me in real time lay out a fairly large wall. If you haven't seen that, I really suggest you go watch that first, especially if you're in the process of laying out a gallery wall yourself, because I give you a couple things to think about and walk you through my process, talking about things like eye line and how the eye naturally moves, balancing color and texture and all those kind of things. So all that is covered in the first video, which I will link below. In this video, we're going to actually hang the gallery wall. So in a moment, I'm going to go back in time to the day I hung this. I'm filming this intro a week or 2 later, but before I do that, I wanted to go over some of the tools I'm going to be using as I hang this wall. The first and most important of which is actually a calculator. Now, the calculator I usually use for this type of things I discovered had died, and I thought it was just needing some like solar energy. Nope, it's dead. I need to buy new ones. But the big thing about gallery walls when it comes to hanging is math. You got to do the measuring and the dividing and the spacing and all that kind of stuff. And having a calculator makes it a heck of a lot easier. I'm somebody who can do a bit of math in my head, not super complicated, but this type of math I can do easily. However, when I start getting into like 3/8 divided by 2 plus 2.5 inches, that's when I pull out the calculator. So I suggest you get a calculator, and don't be like me. Don't use an app that you have to wait for ads to clear. Get yourself a nice old-fashioned one that works. The next most important thing in my mind is a measuring tape. In this video, for every piece I hung except one, I'm going to be using this, which is a run-of-the-mill measuring tape to measure here and there. But for one, I have this little doodad. I have no idea what this is called. I've had it for years. I bought it because I helped one of my friends hang a gallery wall in their house, and she had seen it on an infomercial and bought it, and it makes life so much easier. I'm going to walk you through what it does. And obviously this isn't sponsored, but especially if you don't even know the name. But if you ever see one of these, it's worth its weight in gold because it wasn't that expensive. I want to say it was under 20 bucks. And it's a measuring tape. But what it has is these 2 little like bracket things. I don't know what you'd really call them, but one of them is movable right here. So what you're supposed to do, it's 4 things that have 2 brackets or 2 holes. Because how annoying are those to hang? Because you got to get everything level, and a lot of times you have to get a piece of tape, measure the 2 holes, then get the tape level on the wall, put the holes in and pray everything goes right. This lets you skip all of that. What you do is you line up these 2 little, you can kind of see that they're indented. You line these 2 up where the holes on the back of the piece are. And then you can see, because it's measured, how long it is, and you move this level to where the middle is. So let's say it was a 10, let's be nice to ourselves, and say it was, the measurement between the 2 holes was 10 inches. This would go to, you round it into the middle of 5. Then when you're going to the wall, you put this up, you can level it right there, and then you press it into the wall, or like that, and these 2 little things make indents where you need to put the hangers. It makes life so much easier. I wish I knew what the name of this was so I could tell you. Sadly, I do not. But again, worth its weight in gold. And actually, there's a piece floating around that kind of goes over this for storage. So if you ever see anything like this and you hang a lot of things, or even if you don't, it's worth having or knowing someone who has one. That's your biggest pro tip of this. The other tools that I used a lot in this video are levels, and I used 2 different kinds. I used just a really small level, which I honestly keep this in my cleaning kit because when I'm like dusting and stuff, you inevitably will like mess stuff up. So I'll just like pop it up to make sure things are level, because I can eyeball it, but if you're right on top of things, sometimes it's hard to see what's level and what's not. But when hanging things, so for fine tuning, I use this, but for doing a lot of the hanging, you probably saw me use this larger one, which is 24 inches. I actually had an even bigger one available and I didn't use it at all. But what this is nice for, especially in gallery walls, a lot of times and you'll see this in a moment, you're actually measuring relative to something else. So if you're like making a dot and you need to bring it up 10 inches, and this is too small, something like this is really nice to be able to pop on the wall where your first little dot is, get it level, and then see, okay, here's a line up here for me to be able to say this is where it goes. So a 24-inch level is really helpful for this. Not 100% necessary. I have done gallery walls with just this. This makes things a little bit easier. Finally, the other thing that you're going to need is a mechanical pencil and a hanging kit. I would suggest, if you haven't done a lot of hanging, buying one of those kits that has multiple pieces in it, because each of the hangers are rated for different weights. For instance, I have this one which is pretty well loved. You can see that there are certain sizes that are just gone, and that's because those are the ones I use the most. So once I discovered which are the ones that I use the most, which were the 10-pound ones, 10 and 20-pound ones, I just bought a pack of just those to replenish once this ran out. And then you also sometimes need a step up or a ladder. Those are the tools that I used when hanging these. I didn't really explain that at all in the video. And before I dive in and go back in time to the day I hung this, I wanted to kind of list those out in case it is helpful for you as you embark on a similar project. So without further ado, let's go back in the past to the day I hung this. All right, it is a new day. And this has mostly stayed the same. There's been a couple pieces that I shifted around, and I don't know if I turned the camera on because, to be honest, it was kind of like very late. I think I was already in my pajamas, but I have figured out the layout and I've got a plan for moving forward to get this up onto the wall. I ended up replacing the mermaid, and I think at one point I had another picture by this artist too, and I ended up putting this purple here because even though it's not as dark as the dark blue that I'd been hoping to incorporate, this is a very purple, like, POW, which will be a nice anchor, and also is referenced in like the lily pad, and you can't really see it, but the one that's got that glare over there also has a lot of purple in it. There's also purple in a number of these Chinese flowers, so right there as well. And even that pastel has some too. So, pretty pleased with this. I also did end up breaking up this picture with the little boys and wolves, which it'll still be good. They're still kind of looking at each other, which is one of my favorites. And I managed to work in bits of non-art into this. The one thing I'm not sure if it's going to go onto the wall well is this actual it's a piece of driftwood art that I picked up. It's got a hanger. In my old house, I have a couple like antique hooks that are painted. I can't remember what they're called, like Toil or something. I don't know. Don't quote me. I can't remember. They have a name, but I don't remember what their name is. And I have a third hook that was not in any of these boxes that piece of driftwood art hung from. Don't know where it is, but I also have this really long skinny piece, so I'm going to attempt to make the like cord on it really taut so that I can just hang it and it doesn't really bop down at all, because I really want it to fill a long skinny space. The other thing I wanted to point out that I don't think I really addressed is when you're doing gallery walls like this, it is best to put lighter colored art at the top. As you look towards these up here, you'll notice a lot more white and creamier colors versus like the dark that's down here. So I think it's going to be good. It's not perfect as it's laid out. I think I'm going to do 2.5 or 3 inches, probably 3 inches in between all of the art. So the next step is honestly just a lot of math, and we'll just see how it goes. I've got my hanging supplies, and I think I'm going to start in this bottom corner. I've honestly never done stairs. Usually I pick one side and work my way over. This right here mirrors like the top of the stairs. So I think I'll start with this piece. I'll probably do this one, and this one. This one, maybe. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to figure out exactly how to do this. teacher Hannah is back, and as you probably saw at the end, I struggled a little bit with hanging at the very edge of the gallery wall. In my last video, when I was talking about laying out the like painter's tape on the ground, I mentioned I thought it was pretty accurate within an inch or two. What I didn't realize when I was hanging the very first picture is I didn't go over far enough. So when I got to hang the very last picture, it would fit, but it was literally like a quarter inch away from the wall. So I decided not to hang it there and had to kind of change things up on the fly, which is sometimes what happens. I also struggled a bit with this video, and you may have seen me, I think when I started, I actually hung the first one and got to a couple and realized these were way too high, so I had to redo them. So I did do that. There were the first couple I think I hung 2 or 3 times because this was a stair gallery wall and I hadn't done stairs before. Even though I had the incline, what I didn't have was the actual like steps in my outline. And there was one that when I went to actually hang it, it was basically sitting on the step, which I didn't want. So then I had to raise that and raise some others. I ended up doing 2.5-ish inches between all these pictures. There are a couple where that's off, sometimes deliberately because I had a little extra space and I just divided the difference. And a couple that when it came to hanging, that's just where things ended up. And it was close enough that I said, looks good to me. I'm really excited to show you what this looks like because it looks fantastic. And I could not be happier. Here she is. And here's a puppy who Miss Maisie wishes I was doing other things. Oh, I also should mention, you probably saw me wearing a back brace. I hurt my back 2 years ago quite badly. And then probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I tweaked it. It was not nearly as bad, but occasionally I'll do things that my back was hurting and I decided to put a back brace on for some of this because I could feel it start fatiguing, and that when used sparingly, I find helps a lot. I've actually used it in the yard a couple times too, just sparingly when I'm doing a lot of like up and down work, and it has been a game changer. So if you saw me wearing that, it's not a big injury. It was more preventative than anything else. But again, so excited with this and how it turned out. It's a little hard to kind of show you because it is in a stairwell what the whole thing looks like. Okay, you can kind of see it there. But I absolutely love it. I could not be happier with this curve right here because I knew I didn't want to go up into the very recesses, but I did want something that kind of graced the curve because one thing I didn't think about until I started getting it up is when you're up at the step, these seem really low. But right now I'm at the ground and they're at eye height. So it's really fun to kind of get in here and go up and be able to see things just like these, which are quite high. When you're up a couple steps, they're very close. And again, I am really happy with how this turned out. I started this video before Christmas, and then I decided to leave it because I wasn't sure if I was going to hang something else right here. This is the area that I had to rejig things. This originally was going to go down here. I had some couple other pieces. This was supposed to go here. I forgot there was a fire alarm. So I kind of rejigged things, and I've decided to leave this blank because what I really need is something tall and skinny, which is not something I currently own. I actually have an idea of something that I might make to put there, but it looks fine empty for now, and it's only an area that I really see. So I'll probably hang something there eventually, but for now, I don't think you miss it all that much. And to be honest, you probably couldn't tell that I had to rejig things. I did want to live with it for a little while before officially making that decision. The other thing I wanted to address is I wasn't sure if I was going to leave this because it is a highly saturated, dark piece. And as I talked about earlier in this video, I like things lighter at the top because it kind of draws your eye upward but doesn't stop it. This is a hard stop. Originally, it was going to go here, and then I was going to put this metal thing up there. To be honest, though, as you look at it from down there, which is where most people will be seeing it, it's a continuation of like a green pattern. It's kind of glary, so it might be hard to see, but this is a really pretty dark green mat. This is, in my last video, I talked about some pre-made mats. This is one of them, and this is a frame from TJ Maxx. So that green or similar greens are repeated, like there's an inner mat here, and there's lots of green in this picture. Down here, this lily pad has a green mat. This little boat has, this is another pre-made one, has a green mat. And there's lots of greens in these Chinese prints, among other things, like this little tollware has a lot of green. So I think that repeated element, like here you can kind of see it from down below, because I'll say because the frame is gold, I don't think it seems as dark, especially when viewing it from below. So I've decided to let that pass. I guess goes to show you that there's all those things that I consider about eyeline and balancing. Every once in a while, there's an exception that looks good and you can run with. But that idea of the repeated green really speaks back to something that I don't think I spent a lot of time talking about that I did want to touch on, which is repeated elements are important, especially when balancing a gallery wall such as this one. This gallery wall, I know there's lots of different types of gallery walls, which is something I probably should have addressed. This one, I would say, is eclectic. You've seen ones where they use all the same frame, or they're like all photographs or all similar styles. While I really can appreciate those and they look really sharp, for me personally, I have a lot of eclectic pieces. I pick up things that I like and they end up working together quite well. But having a repeated element, whether it's a color or a frame shade or this type, helps draw that eclecticness together. For instance, and I did think I talked about this earlier, I have 4 of these Chinese watercolors. 2 of them have this pink flower, 2 of them have these orange and purple flowers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. It bookends the gallery wall. It has similar pieces, and even though you might not consciously be thinking about it, your eye will draw these together and it adds that cohesion on either side of this. Other repeated elements, I still don't remember what these are called. I think I called them rubber stamping, and I think they're actually wood cut or lino cuts or something like that. But I have 3 of these. This was by one artist. It's larger and it's got this kind of frame. This is another Home Goods special. It's a really pretty curio cabinet. I love lino cuts. So I have this one here. We pop into the middle. I have this one in a very similar frame. It's by the same producer as the other one. And this is a little campfire with a lot of black. And over here, we've got, again, that same frame with a small, really cute one, another curio cabinet. That is, again, bookending 1, 2, the gallery wall, and it's evenly spaced out so that it, you know, provides that cohesion. I talked about in my last video this artist, which is this is Printer and Press Amy Ferguson. I don't currently work with sponsors, so anything I'm talking about here is stuff that I've purchased myself and I just really love and want to kind of share with the world. So I talked about Printer and Press, and she's got this really whimsical look. She does etchings and then she will color them and do some prints. But this other like fairy tale theme by Jack and Allie Dillon that I have a whole ton of prints by them that I picked up. Jack and Allie Dillon have a really fun story. I'm not going to get all the details 100% correct, but I bought these from their granddaughter, who has a store in Glen Arbor, Michigan, and she herself is an artist. She sells her work there, and she sells prints of her grandmother and grandfather's work. They did this whole series on fairy tales, and I think I bought almost 1 copy of everything they did. If you've ever seen on the wall elsewhere in my house, this was not a fairy tale, but fairy-like. It's kind of strange, but I love it, of a fairy in a canary cage. And then this one is my absolute favorite piece by them. It's called the Nasturtium Fairy, and they get, as you might guess, there's the nasturtiums and then these beautiful fairies. Their use of color, I think, is just absolutely stunning. So those 2 on the wall that I just showed you that aren't part of this gallery wall, all the others I have were standard sizes. So all of them are in frames from Home Goods and TJ Maxx with different colored mats. I think in this wall, I have 4 by them. Put them all in gold frames to, again, provide that added element. Here we have Sleeping Beauty, which I think is very appropriate as it's on its way up to my room. We have Bluebeard. Then I also have Cinderella, which their use of color I think is just so stunning. And I'm sorry there's a bit of a glare on this that I can't really get rid of. So going back to Frank and Allie Dillon's story, their granddaughter owns the shop where I purchased these, and she and her sister discovered this when they were cleaning out their grandparents' house and decided that they were pieces that they had to share, so they made prints of them. I don't know how many prints they have. I don't know if they sell them online, but I absolutely love them, and they fit in with my whimsical style quite well. So I have that added that common element of the gold frames, whimsical style, saturated color, and then I've really divided it out with similar styles of things, whether it's pictures or things I've picked up on my travels. Like, this is a beautiful watercolor that I picked up on a trip to Croatia a couple of years ago. And it ties in with these Chinese watercolors, which are from a trip to China. 3 of my younger siblings are adopted from China, and this, I don't remember what trip this was from. My parents honestly had them, and when they moved, I claimed them because I've always really admired them, and they fit really well in with my stuff. I have pictures interspersed with here, some of like my friends from high school, a family picture of when Molly graduated, another picture of when the kids were super little, other really good friends. These are my best friends. We document the cottage garden. This is a picture I took one day when we had a ton of snow in the middle of fall, and it brought down all these birch leaves, and I thought it was just magical. And I love that it kind of pulls on some of the gold color, not only in the frame, but in this Jack and the Beanstalk picture here, and pulls it. And then we have this wood element that's repeated elsewhere. Some of these things are just things that I liked. Like, I mean, this screams summer to me, and I loved it. As a Michigan girl, I don't actually buy a lot of like Michigan art because I think a lot of times it's really commercialized, but I love this one because it reminds me of a stretch right near where the cottage is. Like, our cottage isn't on Lake Michigan, but it's near it. And I absolutely love that. This is also nostalgic. My mom, for years, had a series of tiles hung up for there's a tile for each month. 2 of them broke a long time ago, and I claimed May because it was my birthday month. I have my dogs in here. This guy is from a trip to Italy. This is from my trip to England, actually, this year. I talked about the water lilies we got to see at Kew, and this is my main souvenir from the trip. Down here we have another really pretty boat that I showed when I was talking about the green. This is actually from when I studied abroad in East Africa in college. And I mean, oh, this is also fun. Another picture of my mom and dad on their wedding day. Walking you through some of the pieces and showing them a little up close really highlights one of the things I love about gallery walls. It allows you to showcase different things. There's those pieces that I loved and picked up because the fairy tale, the romanticism of it all, but then also the memories of those trips. And then mixing in pictures of real life. That's one of my favorite things about a gallery wall, is having that all in one place with that gorgeous display. I also really like to work in not traditional art pieces in there. I think I kind of showed you earlier this toll-wear hook, but I also have things like a fan that was from a different trip to China. This one was from Molly's trip. So that's my oldest sister adopted from China. So that, I think I was like in 5th grade, 4th or 5th grade. And I never really had a place to put it. And one day I thought, you know what? I have 3 different nails, big nails in there, pinning it in place, and I think it provides such a beautiful pop of color, and it lets me have it out to appreciate it. I also have that like driftwood art, and I usually have honestly a couple more pieces, and I had planned to put 2 over there, and they just didn't really fit once I had to rejig things. But that added pop of like 3D, different medium, kind of also brings another element to this that breaks up all the art in a way that I think is just really pleasing. So I'm really thrilled with how it turned out. I could not be happier. It invites you to spend a little time looking at all the treasures I have up there, which is one of the things I love most about gallery walls, is kind of creating a wall full of memories and things that I like that invite people to stop, linger, and appreciate. So one thing I did really want to talk on briefly before we end this video is how I did all the math. I mean, If you've ever hung things, this might be very intuitive to you, but for people who might not have, maybe me sharing this will help you avoid some trial and error, even though you might have seen me go through some trial and error as I hung these things, because nothing is ever perfect. But one of the things to keep in mind is having a fixed point of reference. Usually I have the ground as a fixed point. This was a bit difficult because of the stairs, so what I ended up doing was hanging 3 of them and then using those as my point of reference for all the rest. But really what you need to do when you're referencing it, and I've pulled one off the wall to show you, there's 2 different measurements you'll need. The width of the piece, this one for instance, is 14 inches wide. So I would want to put a hanger 7 inches in the middle of this. What you then need to do, knowing you have 7, and I keep scratch paper nearby to keep some of these things straight, so I might suggest that as well. I did 7 plus space between art pieces was 2.5. So I would do 7 plus 2.5 and know that I needed to measure 9.5 inches off of my reference point over to hang this. The other thing then you need to do is measure how high. So you need a width reference point and a height reference point. Where it gets tricky is if you've got wires like this one, you can't just measure where it's sitting. You need to put it under tension like this and then measure either from the bottom or the top. So if I was doing this one and I wanted it from the top, I would put it under tension and say, okay, this is 2 5/8 tall off the top. Or I'm doing it the other way, and this is actually the worst way to do it. It's easier to do it on the ground. This is 11 3/4 off the bottom. Then adding in that 2.5, which is why you see having a calculator will come in very handy and know, okay, 11 3/4 plus 2.5, that's 14 1/4 off of my bottom reference point. So I need to go up 14 1/4 and over 9.5. That's where you probably saw me with that pencil, something that you can either take off with like a magic eraser or an eraser in general. I then would make those 2 dots. If the dots weren't quite as close to each other as they could be, then I'll extend a line using my handy dandy levels, and where they meet is where the hook needs to hang. When I say the hook needs to hang, if you have a hanger, which this is the one that I use the most, this is the 20-pound hanger, where those 2 lines intersect need to be where this is, not where the nail goes in or the top of the hook, but where the wire will hang. Because even though it's not that far off, this is still probably 3/4 of an inch, an inch, which can throw things off in a larger gallery wall like this. So another tip, not where the nail goes, where the hook goes, or whatever you're hanging something from. None of these pieces were so heavy that I needed to worry about like finding a stud or wall anchors. I do have a couple pieces that those need, and to be honest, those are things I always call my dad for. But he is the expert at those types of things. I really appreciate you joining me on this gallery wall project. I know I said it a couple times, but I am absolutely thrilled with how it turned out. And it's got me hankering to hang some more. Right now we are entering a colder time of year. It is January. It's been very mild. At the cottage, I noticed the other day we actually had some hellebores set in a pretty protected area, but sending up flowers, which was concerning because winter is not over. It's frankly not even really started all that much, even though we have had some snow events. It's been really, really mild. But that's about to change. It's about to get colder this week. It's only going to drop down to like 20-ish, though we are supposed to get some wind. And with the wind chill, the real feel should be in the teens, which is cold. Not as cold as it gets here, but the coldest we've seen all year for sure. I'm not really looking forward to it. And it means that it is definitely time to be inside. During this time, I'm going to be trying to post videos once a week. I'll bring you along on some of my other projects inside. I hope you guys stick around until we can get back into our more typical content, the gardening side of things. I'm going to be looking to start seeds soon. My last frost date's not till the end of May, so I don't start seeds until like February, March-ish. But I'm getting started thinking, and I'm already planning on what are the projects that I think I'll be able to accomplish next year in this yard, and might have to wait for a little bit longer. But there's plenty to keep me busy inside. I hope you guys will check back as I make my new house into my home. And I hope it is of interest to you. I also think I might do some videos looking back at my old yard and some of the things that I did that I really liked, some of the things I wish I'd done differently. So if you guys have viewed me before and there's anything that you ever hoped I could talk more about, let me know and I will do my best to incorporate them. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really appreciate you joining me today. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing and hitting that thumbs up button. And I cannot wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.